Before we start today's show, help us demolish Saints Now in likes for the month of January. We've got a little under 2,000 likes over them, so go ahead, hit that thumbs up button down below today and every day for the rest of the month, for the rest of the year, and let's make sure we never lose a competition to Saints Now ever again. Coming up on today's show, we're going to start things off by going over the latest Kyle Pitts trade rumors because I saw an ESPN article that was very informative and went through all 32 teams talking about what's coming up for them in the offseason. And one prediction they made for the Falcons was Kyle Pitts gets dealt. So here's what Ben Solak from ESPN wrote. Can the Falcons get more for him in a trade than they would in a compensatory pick after he leaves in free agency? I think they could, as he has a rosier future on an offense that actually fits his skill set. My prediction, Pitts will get dealt to the Bengals for a day 3 pick. And I like Ben's prediction. I expect at this point, I'd be surprised if Kyle Pitts does not get traded. It's not that there's even a whole bunch of smoke around it. It's just, it's tough to rationalize holding on to Kyle Pitts for the final year of his rookie contract when in year 1 under Zach Robinson's offense, there was very little role for Pitts. I mean, look at the numbers here. Compared to 2023 with, I would say, overall worst quarterback play, can we agree? I mean, he sees a dip in targets and receptions and yards. The only good thing is every year he adds a touchdown. So I can guarantee you this much. He will provide you 5 touchdowns in 2025. So there's that to look forward to. But yeah, I'm just not seeing a huge role. I mean, let's take it one step further. Amongst all tight ends, Kyle Pitts ranked 16th in snaps. Kyle Pitts played every game this year. And he wasn't even top 10 in his position of snaps. There are guys all above him who all miss games. But Pitts, 16th. So what does that go to say? Well, it goes to show that he doesn't really have a huge role in this offense. And it's tough to rationalize holding on to him for a decent price tag as well, by the way, a fully guaranteed 5th-year option. When amongst tight ends, he's 16th in snaps, 16th in targets, 22nd in receptions, 13th in yards, 13th in touchdowns. There is one good stat, and that's the average. He's 6th amongst tight ends with 12.8 yards a reception. So I think the takeaway I want to part you guys with here is he's not giving you $10.8 million worth of production. And that's what he's going to be getting paid in 2025 on a fully guaranteed 5th-year option. So under the Zach Robinson offense, it does not call for a major tight end. It just doesn't add up to devote $10.8 million of fully guaranteed money and salary cap space to a guy who's 16th in snaps amongst tight ends. He's actually, I still think, a top 10 tight end if we're ranking just pure, give me your 10 best tight ends in football. I just don't think he's a good fit in Atlanta. And that's a bummer because it's a ginormous waste of the 4th overall draft pick. But I'd rather just cut your losses now and get something for him before he inevitably walks in free agency, because I don't see why the Falcons would bring him back. And like Ben said, if you do let him walk in free agency, you could get a comp pick, but the comp pick would be for 1 year later. So we're talking about not a 2026 comp pick, a 2027 comp pick, so way down the line. And compensatory draft picks, there's like a secret formula that the NFL just shields and no one really knows. But basically what it means is if you have like 5 guys all signed elsewhere in free agency and you don't sign anyone, the NFL gives you draft picks because they feel bad for you. But that's under the condition of you also don't sign people. If $100 million is signed in free agency of players leaving your team and you give out $75 million in free agency money, which you're not, but just giving you guys rough numbers here, you're not going to get that much in comp pick value. So what could a trade look like? This is probably a little bit on the ambitious side, but what about the Bengals' 4th-round draft pick? Being honest, and I hope no Bengals fans watching this right now, I don't think it would cost a 4th. Guy hasn't been very productive recently, and it's $10.8 million fully guaranteed. Maybe if Atlanta agrees to split that $10.8 million, so $5 million and a fourth-round pick for Kyle Pitts, it could get it done. But I wouldn't be shocked if it's more like a fifth and a sixth or something. But either way, I would love adding a fourth-rounder pick to this very depleted draft capital. First, second, fourth, and 2 sevenths. So you add a fourth to it, 6 picks to work with, and you got 4 picks in the first 4 rounds. It's not great, but it's manageable. It's not the worst in the NFL. So circling back to this trade idea, yes or no? Are you in on trading Kyle Pitts? I'm not in on the idea that Kyle Pitts is a bad tight end. I think Kyle Pitts is a good football player still, and that's probably just because I can't shake how good he was at Florida and the expectations that follow and the bias of being the 4th pick in the draft. But I do think he's a good player, but I don't think he's worth what you're paying him for a contract year in an offense that just doesn't call his name very often. Towards the end of the year, Charlie Warner was getting more looks than Kyle Pitts. So someone tell me a good reason why they should hold on to him that's not just, well, I think he's good. He might be, but he ain't good on Atlanta's offense because they don't use him in that role. Second rumor news item I want to talk about, Drew Dalman potentially returning. ESPN's article also touched on this subject here, so I want to fill you guys in on what the future holds for Atlanta starting center. But first, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Game Time. Game Time has so many fun and awesome deals out there. Flash deals, zone deals. So if you want to go to a Hawks game as they're starting to heat up a little bit, or a Braves game soon, or any other sporting event in your area, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Game Time offers the Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So once more, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use that code CHAT Sports for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Let's talk more about Drew Dalman here and what his future holds as he enters free agency for the first time in his career. The guy's a mauler. I mean, he is an absolute bulldog in the middle of the offensive line. It's been great having him between Bergeron and Lindstrom for the last 2 seasons, but he will be an unrestricted free agent, so he can sign where he pleases and whatnot. The Falcons will have an opportunity, like all teams do, to extend, which basically means re-sign, but it's kind of an extension because if you re-sign them before the new league year begins, it's more or less, it's technically an extension, but you get the gist of it. But he's been one of the best centers in football the last 2 seasons. It's been one of the better draft picks by Terry Fontenot. I mean, a great steal, great find in round 4. So, by the way, if you're like, don't trade Pitts for a 4th, you can get way more than that. What's a 4th for you? A 4th could be Drew Dalman, which I think we can all agree is a very good quality player. But here's what Jeremy Fowler wrote specifically. Dalman is 26 and an important part of Atlanta's stout offensive line. Keeping that unit strong is key for Penix's development. Expect Atlanta to make efforts to re-sign Dalman, who will have a market. I agree with everything Fowler just said. This will really just come down to the money. I'm sure Atlanta would love to keep Dalman because why wouldn't they? He's been a great center. This offensive line has been a top 10 offensive line for, I want to say, 10 straight years now. I mean, give or take maybe one bad season here or there, but by and large, compared to most other offensive lines, it's been very stout, very consistent, and very healthy. I mean, knock on wood, Dalman missed a little bit of time this year, but you haven't had like the graphic of, you know what I'm talking about, like week 16, 17, where it's like, this is the 21st combination of starting offensive linemen, third most in the NFL. The Falcons never had that issue. But it comes down to money. And I think Dalman's going to want to be paid somewhere around Creed Humphrey. Maybe not the highest paid center in football, but probably the second highest paid center in football. So I expect him to be north of $13 million. This was the projection that I cooked up, just my guess. 4 years, $64 million deal. That's an average of $16 million a season, makes him the second highest paid center in football. So the question on top of just Dalman, because I think there are 2 levels to this, is if you have to switch your right tackle because you don't trust Caleb McGarry to be your blindside tackle for lefty Michael Penix. Do you also want to add finding a new center to your to-do list? Now you're talking about changing 40% of your offensive line. You might not want to do that. So maybe the short answer is, well, if we're going to change our right tackle, we should probably try and keep everything else as consistent as possible. So let's bring back Dalman, and now we're not getting a new center and a new right tackle for our lefty quarterback, which for a lefty, those are the two most important guys on the offensive line. The quarterback-center relationship and the quarterback and blindside tackle relationship. Maybe they just opt to swap Jake Matthews and McGarry. I honestly don't have a great feel or sense for what the Falcons are going to do with McGarry at right tackle. He's going into a contract year 2025. They could just cut him, but he's a starting caliber player. I know sometimes he's a bit frustrating and maddening, but listen, that's going to be true for most offensive linemen. I think he is a starting caliber guy that you'd have a tough time finding someone guaranteed to be better if you were to move on from him. So maybe you trust him to be your starting right tackle. Traditionally, the right tackle is a run blocking tackle, and that's McGarry, and the left tackle is a pass blocking tackle. Asking Jake Matthews, who's been a left tackle for, who knows how long before even playing for the Falcons, but his entire career, to switch sides at the end of his career might be biting off more than he can chew. So I'm in favor of bringing back Dalman and not shaking things up more than you already might have to with a new potential right tackle. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, by the way, because free agency is going to be here before you know it. I don't want you in the dark. I don't want you to be the dumb person at your lunch table, at the water cooler. I want you ahead of the curve, and you will be if you subscribe, turn your notifications on. That way you don't miss a signing or a rumor. Third subject on today's docket, the Saints. I thought you guys might like a little, hey, the Saints suck. Let's talk about that to end the video. So the Saints, this might not age well, but that's been true for a lot of my videos, so who cares at this point? Word on the street is Aaron Glenn might be going to the New York Jets. Why do we care about this? Well, Saints are very interested in Aaron Glenn. And coming from the New York Post, sounds like Glenn prefers the Jets. And the Jets, while they have interviewed every coach possible, they seem to have a liking towards Glenn. So one of the top two candidates for New Orleans might skip over the Saints for the Jets, which, by the way, I don't think anyone should want to be the Jets head coach because look how dysfunctional they are. But if he wants to, best of luck to you. The other coach that the New Orleans Saints have their eyes on is Fat Mike McCarthy. But there is some traction that McCarthy could be going to the Bears. The Bears seem to have two coaches at the top of their list, Mike McCarthy and Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson is starting to gain some traction with the new Las Vegas Raiders, which I can't make any sense of whatsoever because I can't really think of anything they have going for them other than Tom Brady's a minority owner and it's Las Vegas. But there are a lot of states and, a lot of teams that play in warm weather states with no state income. So that can't be the only reasoning. But the whole point I'm trying to make here is if Mike McCarthy goes to the Bears and Aaron Glenn goes to the Jets, I'm looking at their head coach candidates list, and these things are always a little fluid, so maybe by the time you're watching this, a name's been added or so. But who are they going to get? They're not going to bring back Rizzy, right? Anthony Weaver, first-year DC with the Dolphins, really young OC Joe Brady with the Bills. Kellen Moore, I don't think would actually take the job. I think he's someone that's willing to be patient. And New Orleans is not a great job at the moment. Mike Kafka, Giants offense sucks. Cliff Kingsbury, maybe. It's not the worst thing ever. But my prediction is, I don't know who they're going to hire, but I don't think it's going to be either plan A or plan B. And plan C, that's not a good plan right there. So for the Saints, it's looking a little doom and gloom right now for their head coaching search. They don't have a ton of salary cap space. They don't have a super early draft pick. They've got a quarterback. I don't know if it's a quarterback that a head coach wants to hop in bed with and kind of be tied to. So I'm struggling to come up with good pros for the Saints opening right now compared to some of the other openings out there. But I don't think they're going to get their guy or their backup. Before we sign off, as always, well, I don't say as always, but as of late, we've been doing a fun little wheel spin just to kind of get you guys watching on screen for support of the channel, commenting, liking, subscribing. So I picked some recent subscribers and boomsticks. This one's for you. So here we go. Let's see who's going to get 2 claps. And it is Mr. Hell Yeah 72. Hell yeah, 2 claps for you. 1, 2. Appreciate you for subscribing to the channel. I'll see you guys later.